Welcome back to the Sane Estate, Ipswich's ongoing love letter, roast, and weather report for civilization. My guest today is Sara Chalfen Coyle, chair of the Ipswich Climate Resiliency Committee. Resiliency, 5 syllables. All right. The team that helped make Ipswich a certified green community and commit to zero carbon municipal energy by 2040, which is a big ask, but we are hopeful. We'll talk about what resiliency really means. See, we're going to get to that. How a small town tackles a global problem and why climate survival starts right in your neighborhood. Sara.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
I am very glad to be here.
Thanks for dropping by. How about that? That sounds better.
It was an easy stroll from Little Wolf.
Oh, perfect. Oh, cool. So you got some decent coffee out of it anyway. So first question. Okay, so if the world is warming, how come I could still make a snowball?
Well, I think the world's a lot longer than most human beings' lifespan, so maybe we need to adjust our expectations to fit how the timescales are going.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on where we as humans, our lives are too short for us to really get it.
I would agree with that. Life is too short. Isn't that a saying? Yeah. Anyway, time flies and all that other stuff.
All that fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, that was a cheesy question. I just thought I'd ask because, we do hear that from time to time from people.
Yeah, from some really high places too.
Yeah.
But it's a decent question because if we're trying to figure out what to do based on what we see around us, and it hasn't changed enough for people's alarm bells to go off consistently, then
Right.
It's hard to get agreement on what the next steps are.
It's a little subtle. I mean, that's the thing, right? A lot of it, what is happening is kind of subtle, and you take it from a gradual perspective that it's so incremental that you just sort of adapt to it.
Right, and people have lives to live and things to do and kids to get to school and jobs to get to and houses where the roofs need fixing and the grass needs cutting. And, we don't always have the attention span to put on things because we have to focus on what's right in front of us and living our lives.
Right.
So it's kind of understandable. It's part of how we're wired as human beings.
Interesting point. And yes, I would agree with that. How do we get here? Like, let's get to the point. What is resiliency? Why is it a thing? How come it became part of the plan for Ipswich? How did we get here?
That was a whole bunch of questions, which we'll get to one at a time. I think that resiliency, I like to play a word game with people. And it's just like, what's your very first response? One word response when I ask you these 3 words. So I'm going to do them one at a time.
Okay.
First one is adaptation.
Finding a way to...
One word, John. One word response. It's a word association game. So I say a word, you say a word. Adaptation. First response.
Overcoming.
Sustainability.
Preservation.
Resiliency.
Adaptability.
That's,
we just went full circle.
you had many people answered that same way. So at Illuminations, we had an opportunity to ask like 50 people those same 3 questions, and it was really interesting what came back.
Yeah.
Adaptability for resiliency was definitely one of them. My favorite, though, was somebody drew a picture of a football player whose job is to go out there, get knocked down, stand up, and keep doing his job. That's, to me, a really definite description of what resiliency is. It's the ability to take a hit, stand up, and keep going.
And there are a bunch of different iterations of that.
Yeah.
I mean, songs.
So,
and books
there's
and so
football
on.
players. That's a very guy thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, my favorite woman-themed version of that is Rosie the Riveter.
Great.
Right?
Yeah.
So here's a person has a family, has a home to take care of, has half of her economic partnership is no longer there because he's off somewhere else doing something very important. And there's a need to fill. Mm-hmm. So in spite of the fact that she has all these other things that she needs to be doing, she puts herself in the place of filling the need. She picks up a riveting gun and she starts riveting together war machines so that the other half of her economic partnership, known as her husband, can have a boat, a tank, a piece of machinery that's necessary for him to survive in the thing that they're doing. I mean, there's a lot of ways of thinking about what is resiliency. Most of it comes down to people taking a hit and then figuring a way of getting up and keeping doing what they need to do.
So there's countless microcosms of that, and
Yeah.
I get that for
There
sure.
are.
And it is
There
a
are.
continuing, that's an evolving thing in itself.
Right. It's
How
also
that
very much
works.
part of a human thing. We're really capable.
Just sort of wired that way, is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
we have to be like that.
Makes
have to
sense.
be.
I mean, ever since back when we needed to figure out fire.
Exactly.
I mean, right?
Exactly.
Food, shelter,
All the
warmth.
problem solving humans have ever done in the entire recorded existence and before we recorded things.
All right. Well, let's go a little bit more recently, like say the last 20 years, right? How, that's where we started on this journey to get here. But now we're in a situation where it's, what is the actual story about shifting from greenhouse gas reduction to this concept of resiliency? So now we're more about, how we're going to respond to this versus preventing it.
Yeah.
So,
When I was studying this thing called business analysis, it's very closely related to project management as a formal discipline.
mhm.
One of the things you do in project management as a discipline is you look at what could knock my project off. And you really only have 4 ways of dealing with things. And it turns out that these 4 ways of dealing with risks cross every human activity there is. So, and this is going to tie back to greenhouse gas reduction in just a second. If you have something that is a risk, it's going to get in your way, you can do a couple of things. You can find somebody to share the risk with you. You can decide it's not that big a risk, it's fine, I'll just accept it, I'll absorb the whole thing. You can find a way of making the outcome of the risk less of an impact so that, okay, so if I die, I want my family to be able to survive economically. I can
Right.
buy life insurance, they'll have money in case I'm not there.
Mhm.
That's mitigating the risk, right? And then you can transfer it to somebody else completely.
Right.
So when we're talking about you have this giant risk and we know it's because there's these gases going into the atmosphere and it's making temperatures go up really, really slowly, but temperatures are going to go up. The responsible thing to do, the least expensive thing to do, is to avoid the risk entirely. So if you're going to avoid the risk,
Makes
then
sense.
you get rid of the thing that is making the atmosphere getting really, really hot,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's carbon dioxide and all the things that are related to it, like methane. So that's a risk avoidance strategy. That's sustainability. That's what greenhouse gas reduction is about. And that's what all this effort that goes into changing hundreds of years of industrial development, policy, laws, regulations, trade agreements, international negotiations, wars, all of those things that are related to how we produce energy from oil or from any other form of thing.
It's always about
We'll just have to change
Power.
that, I mean, I really wish I had one of a wand from Harry Potter, because then we could just wave the wand at all this embedded process that we have and say, okay, we're not going to do carbon anymore. So we tried this strategy of avoiding the risk by bringing the carbon levels down, and we missed the window.
right.
So now we know, because we've looked at the risks carefully, now we know we have to do both. We have to slow the rate of change as much as we can. So we have to keep doing the decarbonization. We have to keep managing the amount of carbon and other stuff that goes into the atmosphere in whatever ways that we can. That being a very political thing in addition to a very technical thing.
Certainly.
And now we have to figure out how to protect ourselves against, really big waves, gigantic hurricanes, too much snow, not enough water, those kinds of things. That's what resiliency is about. Planning for and getting ready to respond to those kinds of changes and being ready to do it over and over. So I'll be really happy if in the next couple of years we can get to a point where we say, yeah, we are really ramping up getting ready for these things.
I hope we can find ways to do that. I mean, I know we're already doing things, but again, going back to that word resiliency, and you've already elaborated on it to some degree, but as a community, how would that work in Ipswich? How does that apply?
Well, that's a good thing that it's a really big topic, because there's a lot of different ways of getting ready for resiliency, which means that anybody who's got an interest can find a way to contribute. So I would say that it might start from agreeing that there's stuff coming.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of work on, identifying what risks Ipswich is at. I mean, it's pretty obvious in some places. And a lot of people in Ipswich who've lived there for generations have commented, like, the water's warming. I don't see as many clams. There's too many green crabs. Where the sandbars are changing. We are having trouble with enough water because of the regions that surround us.
Yep.
People see that there are changes. They don't know how to participate in it. So part of the job of the Climate Resiliency Committee is to make it easy for people to see where they can take action, and then offer them a set of tools or organizations, et cetera, and we're building out the ability to do that right now. I mean, if you look at the committee right now, we are reflecting where we've been for the last 20 years, which is very much on the strategy of how do we avoid this big risk. So most of the activity of the Climate Resiliency Committee and all the committees that came before it, from the 20 years of activity before that, really was around reducing carbon. And the fastest way that you reduce carbon is you put a lot of focus on where do we get our energy from and how do we use it. So 20 years ago, they did some planning. They came up with something called a climate action plan. It identified 3 main strategies. Its main focus was energy. And it went and it looked at both the private sector, what could citizens do, what could businesses do, what could nonprofits do, as well as what could the municipality do on things. So Ipswich as a town, the town organs, the departments and stuff, the analysis they did back then, they use about 4% of the energy that all of Ipswich uses, which means that if you want to see a really big change, you really need to see it in citizens and the businesses.
Whoa,
but
that's impressive.
To set the example and to show how it could be saving a lot of money, the town of Ipswich did commit to doing things like practicing energy efficiency, which is, sealing up the gaps in buildings so you're not sending the air that you've paid a fair amount to condition right outside where it can't do any good.
Yeah, that's always
and then you
issue.
could buy new equipment. You replace your capital stuff with things that just works better and gives you more functionality. That's what's happening at Town Hall right now.
Okay.
And then the other thing you do is you look at different forms of energy, buying energy that's coming from something that's not developing carbon that's going into the atmosphere. We call that alternative energy. We call that wind energy. That just raised a big red flag for a whole bunch of people in Ipswich because they're very unhappy with the way wind energy was done here.
Yeah, so I've heard.
But there's also solar and there's geothermal. So, like, if you were to think about, okay, how can I most effectively attack this problem? It's getting warmer. I want to do my part. The most effective thing is change the source of your energy.
Okay.
So we do that.
Okay, so that's the scientific aspect of it, or at least the what is it, pragmatic approach.
It's the pragmatic approach.
Right? But obviously, at this point, it's like, forget the war on Christmas. What about the war on science? So with that in mind, the alternative approach would be more philosophical, more principled. So what are those principles that would guide you to help people better, accept this and not become overwhelmed?
My go-to tool for when I am feeling really overwhelmed by this, and it does happen.
Sure.
I mean, it happens to everybody. This is a huge change. Is I keep reminding myself of how capable people are. we are way more competent than we give ourselves credit for. We are much more able to work with each other than we give ourselves credit for.
Good point. I think a lot of us underestimate our own abilities.
The thing is, when you take people who have a big range of what they know and how they know how to do it, you can start generating some really good ideas for taking practical steps.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, it's a good thing that we don't all know the same thing. It's a good thing that we don't all agree on the same things, because if we didn't get together to talk things through, we wouldn't identify opportunities like, we could clear culverts by hand, and that would help with flooding.
Mm-hmm.
We could also go and get money that would allow us to widen the culverts and not turn into a flood risk. We are capable of walking around, looking at the natural world, seeing how things interact with it, and coming to some recommendations and putting those in a plan. We did that.
Yeah.
We did. We did that a couple of times. That plan is called the Municipal Vulnerability Plan. And there's another one that's also called the Hazard Mitigation Plan. And both of those things talk about, it would be really good if people picked up some more skills, but it would also be good if we got some money to make changes to our infrastructure, or if we hired people to help direct different things.
That's a great point. And are you having issues with volunteers or enough people getting involved?
No, I don't. I think people really do want to get involved. The challenge is it's a really big topic.
Yeah.
And offering, not everybody is willing to put 40 hours a week of volunteer time in. Not everybody's willing to even put 10 hours a week in, because their schedules don't allow it. They have other responsibilities.
Sure. Yeah, everyone's got their lives, like you mentioned earlier.
Luckily for Ipswich, there is a really committed core of people who are willing to put in lots and lots of hours. And there is a larger group of people who are willing to put in smaller amounts of hours. So the question is, can we help them find places that fit the amount of time that they have available to them and the things they're interested in?
So in a land of water, which is, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, making a reference to what you mentioned earlier about challenges with water use in this town, which I experience every year because I have a garden. And I like my veggie garden, and I have to water it. So I'm guilty. However,
guilty of what?
Using a resource that maybe is, in high demand, right?
Oh, John, your body language right now is so funny.
It was like confessing to the priest.
Exactly, confessing to the priest that you wanted to have enough water to grow food.
Yeah. It's a terrible thing.
And you're an awful person, you.
I am definitely a
Okay,
bad
so
person.
I really hope that doesn't become a clip that goes. So here's the thing. There are a lot of ways for us to check our assumptions. Like, we might have gotten used to doing things a certain way. It doesn't mean we have to do things the same way always. One of the things we've gotten used to is building buildings in such a way where water runs off and we don't capture it. We let it go into the stormwater system. But there's a lot of examples around in town, and there's a lot of support for capturing that water. And you could do it as many times as you want. I have seen some places where people have rain barrels set up in series, and they capture all the water that's coming off of their shed roofs, and they use that to water their gardens exclusively.
One.
You have one.
I need to have more. But I was just thinking,
How do you use it, though? Do you often take the water from your rain barrel?
Oh, I use it for everything out in front of my house that I water. I use the rain barrel because that's where it is, and so the hose only goes so far. Right. But, as much as possible, I would use that until I can't get any more water out of it, and then rely on the hose or whatever. But again, this is in the conditions that we're still allowed to hand water things.
Right.
Right.
But, so this is a really good example, though, because there's a drought warning. People are being told you can only water by hand.
Yeah.
So our thought process is, if I don't have a rain barrel, I can't do anything. Right?
Yeah, sure.
That's not necessarily true, though. One of the things that's really great about people who like to solve problems and who are kind of inventive, and we are all more competent than we think we are. We just get caught up in thinking we have to do things the same way over and over because that's what we're used to, is you could always take the water that you let run from your shower in a bucket and collect that and use that for watering. You can also use gray water. I mean, there are many examples that are out there for people to exchange information on and figure out how they can conserve water. But the other point about the rainwater not going into the storm system is if you have rain barrels set up and you put your overflow so it's going into the ground and not into the stormwater system,
Yeah.
you're helping as an individual
Yeah.
to recharge the town's water supply.
Exactly. The aquifers.
Right.
Right.
So
Makes sense.
we didn't really think about that 10, 15 years ago. We're trying to get more conversations going about that so that people think, oh, you know, I have been doing things the same way for years because I never thought I had to change. But now I'm kind of curious.
Right.
Now I want to know what I could do. So they go and they start asking questions. How could a rain barrel work? What else could I do? And then they might run across a pamphlet on greenscaping that somebody left around. And there'll be a lot of really useful suggestions in there.
Well, along those lines.
And then somebody will act on it. And then they'll get experience and they'll share their story with somebody else.
Okay.
So this is why I'm
Yeah.
not totally scared.
Despondent, yeah.
Because people are really good problem solvers. They go to other people for help. They share their experiences, and then the information spreads.
Right. We have the shortage of usable water, or that we drink. We certainly don't have a shortage of salt water or water we can't drink. And that being the case, I mean, we know flooding gets a lot of attention. We talk about it, we've already talked about that a little bit, but there are other things. The sea level rise itself versus the rivers rise or not, right? We have buildup of snow, risks for outdoor workers from the heat and the cold, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
shouldn't say that because,
Yeah.
I mean, the cold is still affected,
Right.
right?
So
Because
can I
storms in
check-
general,
How is your overwhelm level right now?
getting there.
Getting there.
When you think about it. But
So
this is my
here's-
point is, like, how do we break this down into more
Exactly.
manageable pieces,
So this
right?
is another one of my
And-
favorite tools.
That's, okay, so here we go.
So, humans do get to a point where we can only deal with what's right in front of us. So how do we pick what's right in front of us? Well, with climate, one of the things I find really useful, and we tried this, and maybe this will help other people. It used to be that people would talk about these 4 domains that made the world go around. It was earth, water, wind, and fire.
Fire.
Fire! Well, like in our world, fire can mean energy, right? It can
Yeah.
mean temperature, it can mean electricity, it can mean anything related to how do we move energy around, produce it, use it, etc. So it can also mean the threat from the temperature. So once you've broken it down into 4 quadrants, okay, there's this other little tool that's called a SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Mm-hmm.
So if you took your 4 quadrants and you said, okay, all right, water. There's a strength, there's a weakness, there's an opportunity, and there's a threat. How do I break it down further? So you may make a list for each one of those things, and then you get to choose. You get to choose which one are you going to look at first.
Right.
Okay, so how do you decide that? Well, the one that's dangerous to you is probably the one you should kind of triage first.
Okay.
But what's the next thing you look at? Your opportunities.
Opportunity. I would say more of the try to focus on the positive side of it.
Because you got to come up with a way of countering the threats.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, acknowledge them, but
Yeah,
think
acknowledge
more
them.
in a positive approach to it.
Okay, so water, drought, shortages.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a significant threat with drought. It means we can't grow food the way we're used to. It means
Right.
the natural life cycle of the vegetation around us and the animals and insects around us that we depend on for the whole web of life is going to be stressed really badly. And that stress is going to mean less good outcomes, the things we're not used to. We're going to have to become used to different things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what does that mean for us? That means we have to figure out a way of like, okay, do I get to use my problem-solving skills? Well, with respect to water, do we get to investigate and learn a little bit more about where does our water come from? Sure. Are there
Right.
lots of people around who are more than happy to tell us about that? Absolutely. Would it help us to have a sort of a general picture of how does water work in general? Yes.
Sure.
Why? Why would that help? Because that helps me see where the opportunities are.
Yeah.
So
Excellent point.
all of
So-
these things are a great opportunity for us to be curious and to experiment and to rely on the fact that we're really good problem solvers.
I think a lot of people, myself included, don't. I think we are less attuned to that. That
Right.
abilities that we have never had to or tried to
Right.
utilize.
Right.
Right,
Because
or
when
explore.
stuff is in the background and it just works for us over and over and over and over again, you kind of forget that it's there.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You
You
take
kind
it
of
for granted
forget
to
that
some
it's there
degree.
until you really, really need it. And then sometimes, if you forget that it's there, you need somebody to remind you that it's there, because then you're able to pick that tool up and use it. If you've forgotten that you have a tool in the back of your shed, it's not going to occur to you to pick it up and use it for
Use
the
it.
problem that you're
Yeah.
solving right now. I just want to tie that back to, like, okay, I'm the chairperson of the Committee for Climate Resiliency in Ipswich, right? So what does all of that philosophical basis mean for us? It means that we get to expand our thinking about what is facing us, and we get to ask people to say, what are you interested in?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do? Some people really are much more interested in helping their neighbors. Like,
Which is good.
there's a whole bunch of people who want to be in a position to physically help during a storm or a flood.
Yeah.
So they go and they work with Lieutenant John Hubbard, and they sign up for the CERT training, the
Search training.
community emergency response teams.
Wow.
And that is really, really helpful to the town, because it means he's got a core of volunteers who are there who will show up and help in the way he can rely on them to help when there's a freaking huge emergency and everybody's running around like chickens with their heads cut off.
Well, that's, I mean, what you're talking about is a perfect example of, why we love living here.
Right.
If people care about
Right.
each other, I think.
Very much so.
And I think that they will help if it's all within their power to help. They
Exactly.
would.
And that is why climate resiliency is a equal opportunity everything, because it's not a niche interest. It's not a hobby. We all breathe the air here. We all suffer from the heat. We all
Sure.
need to drink water and eat food. So every one of us is affected by this. That means every one of us can contribute in whatever way we want. It doesn't have to be a political thing. It doesn't have to be an ideological thing. It can just simply be, I want to help my neighbor. This is what makes talking about climate resiliency really challenging. There are times when it's a very focused level of activity.
Mm-hmm.
So as a committee chair, what is my responsibility? The responsibility is to be able to, gather information and feed it to the appropriate people at the right time and with a suggestion, right? I mean, that's what everybody's work life is basically about.
Mm-hmm.
So
True.
in our context, that means certain kinds of information going to certain kinds of people in certain time frames to get certain things done. We, as a committee, have this responsibility to the town of Ipswich. In our mission statement, it says it's to help the town with climate adaptation
Mm-hmm.
and greenhouse gas reduction. And the way we do that is we strategically collaborate with department heads and with nonprofit organizations like the trustees in IRWA, and with citizens groups. So IRWA is the Ipswich River Watershed Association, and it's
Okay.
a nonprofit that does a lot of work around managing the health of the Ipswich River and the Ipswich River watershed, which is a pretty big chunk of land. It affects, I think, it's more than 5 towns are affected by it.
Oh,
So
that
where
is
we
big.
are, we're sitting between 2 rivers. What does that mean? That means that there's a bunch of organizations that have their fingers in how those rivers are managed.
Oh, yeah.
So what does it mean to be on a town committee as a volunteer? It means we have to understand the relationships between the town, the nonprofits, the state, and the federal level.
That's
So
all, huh?
there's a lot of opportunities for partnership. There's a lot of opportunities for coming up with ideas and making them into real things
Right.
by knowing who to talk to for money to fund things, but also for technical expertise. Just to get our heads around what is the shape of the thing we're trying to do. And that technical expertise, that can range from, understanding how watersheds work to understanding how rate structures for power generation works. I mean, it's all over the map.
Well, a lot of these people probably, their vocations probably contribute to their, their positions.
Absolutely.
As
Well,
organizers
that's
or
true.
volunteers,
Volunteers often do come into the things that they go into their vocations because they're really interested in, or they do volunteer work because they become really engaged with wanting to move the stuff that their profession does forward. But there's also people, I'm not a technical person at all. My training has always been in the business sector, not in the scientific sector. I'm not an academic.
Right.
I did project management and business analysis and some application development. It's really not what you would expect to see for somebody who's advocating for, energy use changes or water use changes or any of those things. And the reason I'm saying that is because you don't have to be an expert to have something to contribute.
No, I think observations lead to that. Observations lead to conviction, I would think. I do. For me,
Yeah.
when seeing things happen enough times, you question it, but then you realize that you find the answer by just continuing to observe it, and that's how things are figured out. Right?
I think people who are really good at observations are willing to say, am I missing something? They're
Yeah.
willing to check their own thinking and to ask themselves, is there more to see? Is there more to this pretty picture? Is there more to this conclusion that I've drawn?
Introspection is kind of a.
I think it's more than introspection, though. It's more like, is this a form of problem solving?
So
Like,
in
why is the
analyzing
water
your own
not
thoughts.
going where I think it should go? Like,
yeah,
am I
sure.
making an assumption about this? Oh, well, it turns out, like if I turned around and looked a little bit more and broadened my viewpoint, I might see that there's a culvert that's jammed behind me.
Right.
Like those kinds of observations, you have to be willing to ask yourself, am I limiting my viewpoint? And if I'm willing to ask myself that, then I might be willing to go ask somebody else, hey, what do you think about this? I hate your political things, but I really respect your technical knowledge.
And that's a
Right.
big challenge all the time, right? Because when you're talking about this climate planning and long-term challenges, long-term implementing things that are going to help us in the long term, right? There's always the political side of it.
Only if I let that be a problem.
How
It
do
is
you-
completely my choice to decide how I'm going to interact with people who don't believe the same things I believe.
Okay.
I can always choose to say, there's a piece of information that this person holds that's really important for moving forward.
But when those people are in positions of power and they control your ability to do what you believe should be done, isn't that the bigger challenge? That is a challenge in itself, because
If I
without
choose for it
people's
to be.
involvement, or
There's usually more than one path to a solution.
I should say, put it this way. For example, the town council, or
How about this?
not-
When people don't have a lot of money, do they just give up? Or do they find ways to do their hair and make their clothes look good?
well, that's a great point. There's resiliency in that itself, finding a way around
It's
it.
a choice.
However, where do you get the money if they don't give it to you?
You go somewhere else.
So there are other resources beyond the town's government?
So this is an excellent, excellent example of how my viewpoint could limit my thinking.
Okay.
If I believe the federal government is my only option for funding to do something, I might very well miss that there are 20 much smaller organizations that are willing to work together and each pitch in a portion that
Right.
adds up to 90% of what the federal government would have given me. And those 20 organizations have the same interests I have.
They have the stake in it,
Right.
right? And
So-
that's very true.
So my viewpoint of the federal government is the only option for solving this problem is really limiting.
I wouldn't even agree with that. My point was, I was talking about the local level. And,
Okay.
But you're talking about
I'm making
there are
it.
other
I'm just.
organizations that are
I'm just
independent.
going for an example that's on people's minds because,
Sure.
frankly, I do find it extremely intimidating to hear an administration to say something along the lines of the system for emergency response that we've built out over the last 20 years and the response of lived experience is not going to work the way you're used to it working.
Right.
So get ready.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, that's intimidating. That's a lot of work that has to be redone. On the other hand, because it's a lot of work that has to be redone, it gives us the opportunity to say, what would I do differently? How
so
can
there's
I make
opportunities to
this a better
improve.
thing?
Sure.
Right? How do I relieve myself of needing to work with the by necessity slow processes of this gigantic organization and let myself work with something that is a little bit nimble by necessity because it's much more small and doesn't have the resources to invest in giant things.
Well, okay. So, and this is a great point, I think, and I think it's also very true. You start, I want to say at the bottom, you start small. You
start
check
small.
what's immediately around you and you go from there.
Right.
Makes sense. Don't go for the big fish. If the mackerel or the minnows, well, who's going to eat them? But they are there, and if they're willing to help you get to the bigger fish, or at least supplement or even replace the bigger fish, which is what you're getting at. You'd rather avoid the federal involvement. I understand that because of the fact that local involvement brings the empathetic response that you might need.
It also brings you your natural partners.
Yeah,
Right?
well, they're here too, like
I
you
mean,
said.
like,
there's-
Hamilton and Wenham and Rowley are all dealing with very similar problems. There's no reason for us not to. And we do.
Absolutely.
We do a lot of this. I don't mean to make it sound like we're not already. But we can partner with our neighboring towns. And there's a lot of organizations that allow us to do that.
So we've said a lot of...
And the state, too, same thing. We can partner
Agreed.
with the state.
Sure. Now, we've said a lot about what people as individuals can do. We're pledging this, complete zero carbon by 2040.
Right.
How are we, what's realistic?
Okay, well, let's talk about what zero carbon means first. Like,
Good
what's
point.
what's the definition of that?
Yeah, okay.
Right? Because this is a little bit like resiliency, sustainability, and adaptation. People think that we all have a shared definition of it, and we do not.
No, well,
We
first of all, I
don't.
don't think it's a literal
So in
concept.
Ipswich Select Board
Yeah,
and FinCom and School Board all signed off on something called the Zero Carbon Resolution. And what it says is Ipswich as a town will buy energy that is sourced from non-carbon producing sources
okay.
by 2040. So 100% of the energy that Ipswich as a town uses will come from some combination of hydro, geothermal, nuclear,
And solar.
solar,
Right.
right? Some
that's-
combination of that. And we are very far along the way, that path. That's not as much of a jump as it sounds. So if you take the combination of becoming more energy efficient, getting rid of the leaks and wastage of things, buying more efficient equipment. We should also talk about what the definition of energy efficient is. And then where do you buy your energy from? It's very doable to get to zero carbon.
Okay. So go ahead and help me out here. So energy efficiency and the other things that you elaborated on. So get us all up to speed on what that all, a true definition of it, or at least a true
I
application
want
of
to just
it.
talk about energy efficiency for 1 second, because this is something that we can get caught up on, especially those people who really value a cost-benefit analysis,
Okay.
and they're looking for a return on investment, and their return on investment is usually really about the dollars, right?
Usually, yeah.
No. People forget that the reason we do that analysis is to ask themselves, the problem that I'm trying to solve has this problem and that. It has 3 different solutions.
Yeah.
And my job is to decide which of these 3 solutions is the best one, right? Each solution is to solve a problem. That is the main benefit, not the return on investment. We are not talking about investing money in the stock market.
Well, I don't think you would. I don't think capitalism applies to this kind of idea.
The terminology that we use can be very confusing. And after a while, people are going to resort to the easiest thing to understand. And the easiest thing to understand is, do I get a return on my investment? It's dollars.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about energy efficient stuff, like say you want to replace your furnace. The furnace you have is described as being 60% efficient. So what does that really mean? It means for every dollar that you spend on fuel to make that furnace run, you're getting 60 cents worth of heat.
Right.
That's what energy efficiency is. It's every dollar that you spend on the input, fuel, whether it's electricity or diesel or propane or natural gas, you get X number of units out from the equipment.
So it's
so when you replace a 60% efficient boiler with a 95% efficient boiler, 95 cents of every dollar that you spend on fuel is going to be returned to you as heat. That's a big jump in efficiency.
Yeah, it is a big jump in efficiency. So, It's like the concept of crap in, crap out, but in a positive way.
Right. It's even more cool when you
Good
start
in,
talking
good
about
out.
When you start talking about heat pumps, though, which is this really cool technology.
I love
You
heat
start
pumps.
going from 100% return to 300% return.
I mean, yeah, they pay for themselves in a couple of years, It's
which
amazing.
is just something worth thinking about, because we're used to thinking there's no such thing as perpetual motion. But there is a technology that allows you to spend a certain amount of money on an input cost of electricity and get more than that amount out in your desired output.
So one other thing about that, and this is we'll probably try and close up with this, but I mean, that idea, and it's already gone out of my head.
Defining efficiency or heat pumps?
The idea of I forgot. Oh my God, I hate that.
This happens to me all the time, John.
I was all in on that, man. Well, anyway, okay. So along the efficiency aspect. Oh, the pushback is.
Well,
this is it. I just remembered. The pushback is when people say, "Okay, yeah, great. We're going to use more electricity and we're going to use more batteries and everything." But how are they produced, and where does that electricity come from? Fossil fuels or some other, non-alternative source. And that you hear a lot of that argument.
Yeah.
And it makes some sense. So how do we define that? How do we say,
well,
that's
I
okay?
personally go to like the ELD annual report, and I look at what their power portfolio is made up of. I look at where do they buy their electricity from.
Okay, and so you're saying there are sources
what I'm saying is you can measure and you can define what the proportion of power that's coming from different sources is, and you can get a pretty good idea of, what's going on. And like that, I do not want to get into an extended discussion of power portfolios because I am not well educated enough on it. But I will say this.
I'm not either.
Ipswich is really, really fortunate that we have a very proactive electric light department full of people who are working day and night to come up with ways of delivering power cost effectively that also advances the interests of the town. I would strongly recommend getting one of them on the program so that people get a better understanding of what it means to be responsible for the power source of the town.
Any of those
and what
people
it takes
listening?
to maintain that. But as a climate resiliency question, I would feel really comfortable in saying it has a direct impact on how hot the world gets.
Yeah.
We do want to do our part because we're responsible citizens and we're not vandals. And the way we do that is something that Dylan would be more than happy to tell you about.
Okay.
Because
Well,
the Climate Resiliency Committee cannot take that on as a sole focus.
okay, so let's stalk him. Dylan, is that right?
Dylan.
Dylan, you're invited on the show. Okay. Well, this has been amazing. I got schooled big time by you. So I do appreciate that.
Hopefully in a way
learning
that
some
makes
things.
you want to continue to talk to us. Because
This is a subject I think that, like you said, should concern all of us,
Mm-hmm.
young or old, but especially young, because they have a lot more time on the planet than we do. So they best should be aware of where we're going and how we can
And I
mitigate
think
it.
one of the best things that we can do for them is to show them what it looks like to work cooperatively and collaboratively with each other. And I will say, I'm not overly fond of the word collaborative because it's really overused. And it starts, when we use words a lot, they start to take on this is an in-group question. Like if I
Right.
hear somebody using the word collaboration a lot, I feel like they're trying to signal something to
Sure.
me about who they belong to and what they want to do.
Yeah, makes sense.
But as a verb, it's a pretty helpful one,
It's an
which is
important
meaning
one.
basically like, okay, you have interests, I have interests, I have skills, you have skills. Let's work together to see how we can get a better outcome than we could if we did it by ourselves.
All right, so we started with resiliency and we're going to end with collaboration and how we use those words in our daily lives. Let's work on that. Right?
Right.
All right, Sarah. So now, with all that out of the way, it's time for the lightning round.
Okay. I'm ready.
And this is when we ask you some very serious, most likely very stupid questions that have zero meaning in life. But, we just want to see what you think. And
Okay.
no time to think, just whatever comes to mind. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay, number 1. Would you rather speak in song lyrics or movie quotes, and name your favorite?
Movie quotes. The one I've been thinking about recently is Tyrion Lannister talking to Jon Snow. And Jon Snow is like, how do I get people to believe me? And Tyrion Lannister is like, people's minds aren't made to deal with problems this big. You can't get them to believe there's an army of the living dead coming to tear them apart.
That's probably true. All right.
So
Number 2.
Movie quotes for sure.
Excellent. Number 2, how many corners does 5 corners actually have? 4, 6, 9, or should we call it and ask?
I need the outsider to come back and tell me that. I think it's 26. Depends on whether you're counting all the angles and corners of each piece of the thing.
I have to argue with Doug a little bit on that one. I'm not sure if it's 26. I was thinking more like 9-ish, but hey, I can't count corners either very well. So
I mean, like, it's even worse if you think of it as being in 3 dimensions. It's like, what if we were talking about a big globe with all those different corners and angles to be dealing with? Fortunately, it's only a roadway, and it's not like you don't have to go through space to do that too.
overwhelmed now. We're
Yep.
talking
You asked.
All right, trigonometry or whatever. No. Okay, number 3. When you're flying at the speed of light and you turn your headlights on, does anything happen?
I don't know. Turn your headlights on.
Flying at the
I
speed of light?
kind of feel like it's like you just get smacked in the face with the light you just turned on, wouldn't it?
I don't know either. It's one of
Does
those
it just
mysteries.
it's like pool in front of you and it just gets a bigger and bigger pool of light?
So we let master light speed. I don't think anyone's
Or
gonna
is
run
it like the Millennium Falcon going, hitting hyperspeed?
Could
No.
any one of those will apply? I'm
Yeah.
going to take that.
Yeah. I mean, is it a bright light? I mean, they're headlights, right?
I guess it
If it's
depends
too
on the
bright a light,
wattage.
can you even see at that point? Does it matter if you can see at the speed of light?
Now you make. I can't think about this. This is too much. This was your question. All right, turducken.
Turducken.
A triple take on Thanksgiving or a German car?
I love the concept, but it's kind of gross. Triple bird. Turducken.
Okay, you are correct. We will take that as an answer. All right.
Uh-oh.
No, I was just looking at it. All right, true or false? The Beatles song "Twist and Shout" is about dancing with arthritis. You know what I mean?
I really
Right?
want to say true
Like,
because I'm, at the age I'm at, things hurt. But
Oh,
no,
neat.
true, false.
True.
It's true?
No, I just
Oh.
made it up. It's true to me. I was just
I
out
mean, what
dancing
is-
the other night and it was like, oh, I'm sore,
I
man.
can't, Do you remember the game Twister?
Yeah.
Which we all played when we were little kids. I don't know if people still play it, but
It came out again. It was big
the
for a while.
very idea of playing Twister it makes my bones hurt.
See?
It does.
It's arthritis. I'm telling you. Okay. Last question. Yes or no? An ant really can move a rubber tree plant, and explain why.
Yes,
Why?
because nature is cool.
Well, I was going to say he has high hopes.
Oh, yeah, that was.
Shouldn't we
that
all
was
have high hopes for
painfully-
the future
That was painfully good.
of climate resiliency? Huh? See how
Of
I
course,
came
well,
around
look,
like that?
here's
That
my
was my
faith. My
weave.
faith is in people, that we care about each other. We care a lot about each other, and we are willing to go to incredible lengths to take care of each other.
I hear you. And you were correct. And I totally agree with that. And as long as we all are on that, we're all in the same car, or we're on the same boat, however you want to put it, heading to the same place. So let's all make it as good of a trip as possible and happy for everybody. Right?
That works for me. Even if we don't like each other and we don't agree with each other, we can do that other thing you were talking about without having to like each other or agreeing with each other.
Totally true. Sarah, it's been great. Thanks so much.
Been a pleasure. Thank you for keeping up with me as I bounce from spot to spot on this. This is an enormous portfolio of issues, and
Well,
I'm
this is
very,
why
very grateful for
I
the
think we'd like to
opportunity
have
talk
you
about it.
come back again and talk more about perhaps other things that we had a brief conversation about before we got on.
Yeah, I would really like to do that because, the way we work with each other is really important. So if we could come back and talk about some civic stuff, that would be awesome.
It's a deal.
Thanks.
All right.
Appreciate that. Thank you for having me on.
Happy to do it. That was Sara Chalfen Coyle, chair of the Ipswich Climate Resiliency Committee. Proof that resilience just isn't about rebuilding, it's about reimagining, right? Well, anyway, I'm John Woolforth. This has been the Sane Estate, where we talk about things that make Ipswich, well, Ipswich, right? So maybe you're watching this or hearing this and saying, I got a story to tell too. I'm sure you do, whether it's a good one or not. Well, you should just reach out anyway, because we're looking for people to get on the show. And how do you do that? You want to reach out via email to guest@saneestate.com and tell us why you want to be on the show. Whether it was like, you made it through 5 corners, or you actually bitched out the outside at Market Basket, because he did say that happened. So I don't know who that person was. All right. That's my thought on that anyway, but we're always looking for people. So until next time, thanks so much for listening or watching or both. And until then, stay curious, stay kind, but most of all, stay sane.